In a world where the biggest gaming companies constantly hold back on the games that we, the fans, are desperate to get our hands on, we thankfully can rely on the indie scene to fill whatever gap we desire. This is WARPDRIVE, a new game created by the Guildford-based indie team Supergonk. Now, Supergonk are not exactly new to this field. 2 years prior, they released the game Trailblazers, which is very similar at first glance. You know, that being a futuristic racer. But it had an impressive twist, and that twist was Portal 2. In the game, you had to leave a trail of paint behind you in order to then go over that paint and get a boost, just like Splatoon, I suppose. It was a mix of fun, franticness, and sometimes annoying, in a good way, gameplay that did what all good futuristic racers do, and that makes you want to come back and have one more go. WARPDRIVE is no different. This is yet another futuristic racer to join the futuristic racer pile that has games such as WIPEOUT and Fzero sitting on top. But just like Trailblazers, it too has a unique mechanic, and that is of course hidden in its never going to be the top of any search ranking title, WARPDRIVE. Now, a quick word of warning, guys. There's no epileptic warning when you boot up this game, but I am definitely going to be giving you an epileptic warning, because if you suffer from these sort of things, then perhaps you don't want to be watching the rest of the video, because when you play WARPDRIVE, you are going to be seeing a whole heap of this. So, WARPDRIVE. Does that music style sound familiar to you? Yeah, it does, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The warp mechanic of WARPDRIVE is the backbone of this game. At first glance, it may seem simply like a spectacular way to boost, but thankfully the team have actually put some serious time and effort into making sure that it does quite a lot more than that. The problem is, at this early stage of this budget title's release with absolutely no updates as the making of this video, very few of these very cool mechanics are explained, and sadly it holds it back from being the game that it so desperately wants to be. Let me explain. The warp mechanic, it obviously lets you boost, which is done by hitting the speed pad thingies on the floor. You can also activate it by drifting around corners long enough to activate it, and then of course you can collect up to 3 of what can only be described as Crash Bandicoot's crystals scattered about the course in order to set it off when you see fit. But that is just the bare bones, because you can also get these crystals to target opponents and warp into them, taking their lead. This heavily changes up the gameplay of a game like this. The more you play, the more you will learn the tracks, which then makes you have to make decisions of using boosts in long straight areas that have no boost pads, using the crystals to smash through one or hopefully more opponents, or saving it to warp in place of whoever is in front of you at the very last minute. It's a very clever mix-up of the genre that we all know so well, that is not just another futuristic racer following in Wipeout's footsteps with a ZX Spectrum colour scheme. It genuinely is a very clever mechanic that I'm sure, in a good multiplayer setup, would actually result in an absolutely brilliantly hectic fight to the finish. Oh, and by the way, I would actually say that this game is closer to the Fast Racing League style of gameplay that hit WiiWare, Wii U and then the Switch. The biggest difference besides the warp mechanic is that in WARPDRIVE, the cars feel a lot less heavier than the Fast Racing League games, resulting in a crap ton of more drifting, which is nothing but a good thing if you ask me. The game is around about the £10 mark on Steam, and that budget price is reflected in what you actually get to play here. Sure, you get a good looking game, a great to control game, and an excellent, albeit rather short soundtrack featuring a title track by none other than Hideki Naganuma. Who, you ask? Not bad for a Temmer, am I right? Well, it's actually priced quite reasonably. The art style is fantastic, the gameplay is fantastic, the music, albeit short, is also fantastic, but everything else on offer here is lackluster at best. Tournament mode. That's it. That's literally it. You can play in multiplayer locally, and remote play is also available too, but no other modes are available. No single race mode, no time trial mode, no arcade mode, nothing. Every mode I just mentioned is actually shoehorned into one continuous tournament mode that, from what I can tell, is randomized and put in an order that you simply cannot change or replay. You can skip a course if you can't do it, but then there is no way to go back and tackle that challenge again once you get better at the game. A perfect example of how this does not work in your favour was my randomised third race in the tournament. A time trial on the Warp Crystal Caverns course. I'd already done this course once by this point, and now it wanted me to finish in a specific amount of time with no other opponents on the track. I must have spent an hour constantly trying to master the course, and I could never get to the finish line in time. Every corner, every boost, every direct and indirect path was tested and played out until I had no other choice but to skip the course and move on. The next several races were completed on my first or second attempt, but I could not do that one course, and by this point I couldn't even go back to try it again. I'd used all of the money in the shops, upgraded as much as possible. Literally, there was nothing left in the shop. I simply could not do that course, and if you ask me, some of those drive-thrus were perfectly driven. And then I worked out several levels later, because the game never actually told me this, that the Bandicoot crystals allowed me to actually go through grid-like walls and floors, opening up other sections of the racetracks that had extra boost pads in them. I was only ever a couple of seconds away from completing it, so I deleted my save and started again. It wound me up that much, and by the time I got to that third race again, it was no longer there. I wasn't able to redo that race until much later on in the tournament, and by that point I was a lot more powered up, and it was no effort whatsoever. It's apparent that the progression of the game's tournament mode needs serious refinement. I'm maxed out at level 10, I have upwards of 5,000 coins in my virtual purse. The shop only offers new items every 3 races, I buy everything available, and I still always have more than I could ever spend. Plus, if you ask me, the different vehicles and courses, due to the art style they have gone with in this game, all look very, very similar. I like the art style myself. I think it actually suits the game and the music. I just think more variety needs to be added to make them stand out from one another, because, well, everything just kinda looks the same. If you're even slightly good at futuristic races, you will win every single race after the first 5 or 10, as you become so incredibly overpowered, with the game randomly chucking you 1 versus 4, 1 versus 1, collect as many coins as you can, and time trial levels on the same 5 courses. Literally expect to spend 1 race picking up coins, doing something else, and then doing the exact same thing on the exact same course again. It's obvious to me that this game is far from finished, or at least I hope it's far from finished. I had a lot of fun playing this game, but the tournament mode? What tournament? These are just random gameplay styles on loop and repeat. There needs to be more clever modes that make use of this game's awesome mechanics. I was begging for a Burnout style takedown mode, or a keep your car within a certain area mode like the Sonic racing games, keep your boost up as much as possible mode, air times, mirror, all that good stuff. WARPDRIVE is a brilliant contender to the oversaturated hover racing genre, but currently 50 races in with no end in sight on my playthrough, 40 of the last 50 by the way, I think I lost once. It is simply too bare bones at this stage. Hopefully in like a year or so, if and when this game has had a whole heap of updates, it will actually become the game fans of the genre really want it to be. But then again, you know, it's a tenner. For that price, I don't think there's really much to complain about, especially if you have the ability to play in multiplayer, which is where I think this game will really shine. Links to the game can be found in the description. A huge thanks to the team sending me this review copy. If you liked the video, please do consider clicking that subscribe button. Perhaps also click the bell. Don't smash the bell. I need the bell. You need the bell. Otherwise, YouTube won't tell you when I upload new videos. Yes, I know that's what subscribe is supposed to do. You just need to click that before the bell option opens up. Also, you need to click the all option in the drop down menu after clicking the bell. I'm so sorry.